Welcome, everyone. We are having a new chapter today of the Art of Healthy Retirement. I'm so excited to introduce you to Cherri Schleicher. So excited because she has an incredible story and an evolving story, which I'm so passionate that she's going to share with us today. So our podcast is for business experts in and around retirement. Our goal is twofold: to support those business experts who are transforming from a career to healthy retirement, or business experts who have retired. So our format is they're about 30 minutes on Zoom, and it's going to be posted on my YouTube channel. And the interview focuses on our guests who are living or will be living their ideal retirement with health. No interview is the same, and that's the joy of the discussion. And we are disrupting the way you think about healthy retirement in real time. So each podcast will be educational in content and offer inspiration to others by showcasing the guests living life on their own terms. So welcome, Cherri. I'm so excited that you're here today, and thank you so much for volunteering to tee this up.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. So as I alluded in the introduction, you have a lot of credentialing behind you. You have a lot of experience, and I would love for you to share how you've taken action in your life, right? You've had a very long and illustrious career, and how did you move from that to where you are now today? So I'd love a little backstory, and then what are you doing to stay out of trouble right now?
Great question. So, my career, just a little bit of a backstory, began as a regular staff nurse, step down cardiac unit.
Wow.
And during that time that I took care of patients there, I was always intrigued by the ones that didn't come back, that incorporated more lifestyle. They were on supplements, many of which I was not really familiar with at the time, not something that you really get educated a lot about in nursing school. Yeah. So from that step down unit, I went into a cardiac intensive care unit and took care of quite a number of people who had sudden death and heart rhythm disturbances, and became quite familiar with one of the cardiologists there, who was a cardiologist / electrophysiologist. So dealt with people who had a lot of sudden death, and began working more closely with him and seeing his clients in his office as well as staffing. And I started to hear similar stories with these people, survival stories from the spouses or significant others. And I asked them at that time, do you want to start a support group where you can talk to other people who may have experienced similar stories? It's up to you to share what you care to share. And a lot of them agreed. And so we started this small little support group in the basement of the hospital in one of these rooms in the back. And it grew, Nancy, immensely to hundreds of our patients.
Wow.
We went to hotel rooms conference rooms where we would have luncheons, and some of them were so gifted they would play musical instruments for the others. We would break out in sessions, and it really sparked me with how much community this was. And I just learned so much from them. So fast forward from that, I decided to go back to school to become a nurse practitioner, because I felt that there was just more that I needed to know. And much of their healing did not come from their surgical procedures or the medications that they were on. It came from within themselves. And that was something that really sparked me. So went back to school to become a nurse practitioner, and started off in a traditional setting once I graduated, which was really good to get that background, but found out very quickly that I did not do well in that kind of a setting. I wanted time, I wanted community, and I wanted to educate more and really kind of get at the root cause before I knew what root cause was,
Yeah.
essentially. So I ended up working in an area where I was really seeing people. They were very blessed to give me a length of time where I could spend with them, but I was referring outside of the system to get to providers that knew functional medicine. And I was just starting to delve into that at that time. So that wasn't really working very well with the institution. So I kind of decided at that point, I needed to go out on my own. And so I left and I started slowly educating myself in root cause, in lifestyle more so, to really begin to help people. Now, at the same time, as I was entering into some of that, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and kind of declined very, very rapidly. It was kind of spurred by my grandfather dying suddenly, at home. And in hindsight, he was probably helping to kind of cover up for some of her not remembering things very well. And I watched my mom and my aunt, take care of her and try to get her the best care. She came and lived with us for a period of time and wandered away, and the police officer had to bring her back. And then she left the gas stove on, which could have created lots of things, within the house, but it was caught, in time. So they had to put her in a facility where she could receive, better care, essentially.
More hands-on.
Yeah. And I remember my mom making a comment at that time saying, if this ever happens to me, I don't want you to take care of me. I want you to get me to a really good place. And hindsight is 2020. I'm like, my mom is vibrant. Nothing is ever going to happen to her, is what I was thinking to myself. Again, we fast forward several years and my mom starts not remembering. We noticed differences in driving. Our youngest child made comments that grandma couldn't quite remember how to get from school back home.
Wow.
She was actually directing, and saying, turn right here, turn left here, the house is down, the way. So tried, to get the care that she needed. It was a little frustrating as her current provider at the time had the notion that everybody gets this at some point in time, and your mom has just reached that. There's nothing we can do. Unfortunately, if we fast forward that, my mom did pass away almost 3 years ago now in March of 2020. And she did remember immediate siblings, myself and my brothers, but unfortunately had forgotten many other things. And it really, during her period of not doing well, which was about 5 or 6 years, I really started delving into what about Alzheimer's? How can we prevent it? And got interested in Dr. Dale Bredesen and was trained in his protocol. Unfortunately, I can do nothing, for my mom, and was not able to at the time. I didn't have enough knowledge base. So kind of my goal moving forward is to teach the rest of my family and those that I care for that you can prevent this and you can reverse things in the earlier stages. So it has totally changed, my life and how I care for myself.
And how is that explained to our audience, the shift in terms of, sorry, we can't help you, and accepting that as a fact, and accepting that as, well, that's the way it's going to go, to there may be some other things, and what could those things be that you discovered?
Yeah, it's really education and getting that word out, Nancy. I am just passionate, about that. When I can, with friends and family, I will make comments and try to educate people, especially when it comes time to the whole world. Well, genes, it's in your family, so therefore it's going to happen. No, that's not necessarily true at all, because we now know, if we take a look at the statistics of Alzheimer's and dementia, that many people who get it don't have any genetic markers at all, which really points to what are things in lifestyle, or what are our exposures, or the 36 holes in the roof that Dr. Dale Bredesen refers to. It's really finding what are those pieces and getting at that underlying cause, incorporating in as much lifestyle. Yes, there may be supplements that can go along with that as well too, to really move the needle forward instead of having it, go backwards.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Go back to what you were talking about with the statistics, because I think that with all your expertise, you can tell us a little bit more, maybe more detail about what the statistics are, and then why was that such a breakthrough in the science world, and why is that important for people to consider, that it's not a death sentence. In fact, it is, I think, and please explain, because you have all this medical knowledge, but that it's very important to know you may or may not be a carrier, but also it's what you do with what you know. So educate us. We're dying to know what you can tell us, please.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things that relate to the statistics, so I'll pick out a few pieces here, for you. One, I'll just mention, we used to think that cholesterol was so bad. We now know, first of all, cholesterol itself is so important for all of our cell membranes, how our cells communicate, including those in our brain. Hormones, including, all male, female hormones, cortisol, vitamin D, and it's manufactured, by the liver.
Right.
And our cholesterol that you have drawn, for example, really has very little to do with your dietary intake. It has to do with what your body needs. So it's important, that people understand that, one of the things that was treated, is elevated cholesterol, and some of those medications can have the side effect of memory loss with that. And with knowing that, getting at that underlying cause can prevent, detrimental side effects from medications that may not be needed, if somebody takes a look at the whole picture or goes to a provider with that. The other piece of it, statistic wise, is we've seen, a greater increase in Alzheimer's, dementia, various forms of cognitive decline, with the incidence of metabolic, dysfunction or impairment, type 2 diabetes, in particular. And you can really see historically the rise in type 2 diabetes when we went to the low fat or no fat diet.
Yes. And tell people, back up just a second, tell people, what is the type 2 diabetes? What does that mean in people like me? What does that mean?
Absolutely. So type 2 diabetes has to do when your cells in your body become tired and not responding to the hormone insulin. Whenever we eat anything, any kind of foods, even good whole foods, our blood glucose rises, sugar levels in the body. That triggers a certain set of cells in our pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin. And insulin works on taking those sugars and putting them into the cells and giving us the energy that we need. What happens when we have foods that are more inflammatory, higher in processed sugars, is that the pancreas has to work harder and harder and harder and secrete more of this insulin, that after a while it gets tired. It just can't do it anymore, Nancy. And then what happens is that the levels of blood sugar rise in individuals, and then their insulin can't keep up with it. And now they need help. Usually, in many first-line medication treatments, of course, is lifestyle, but then there's, medications that go before we actually need to get the body in.
So you're saying that this spike happened in the thinking of we're going to do well for ourselves, that we're going to have a no-fat diet, and that was such a commercial push by many food companies and agri companies and even lifestyle at the time, right? Because I know that my mother was all caught up in, oh, no, we're not going to eat this. There's certain ways. So from your perspective, what have you observed about the no-fat diet? What happens there?
Well, what happens with that is that, unfortunately, it's kind of twofold. Not only are we not getting the good fats, but they've added a lot of processed sugars. So it's kind of a double whammy to the body, that way. And I totally hear you. Advertising is huge. My mom gave us margarine and my dad, because they were told that butter was bad. Oh, you can't have eggs today, because we had them a couple of days ago and we can only eat so many in a week because they're high in cholesterol. So I think, again, the education piece, what we know now, from that is really educating the public that we do need good fats, for our body's health, but our brain's health. Because our brain fuels on two sources of fuel, either sugar or fats. And we know that the sugar is very inflammatory. We want to feed it those good fats.
Yeah. And I think that's such an important point for those listening or listening on the replay, that the brain as well as the body, but I'm always thinking from the brain point of view because I'm working, and so I want my mind to be going and be creative, and like for many other people, right? Too, I think there's been a recognition in the marketplace, but what are you seeing from your patients in terms of pushback, in terms of education around that? The to really eat to fuel your brain, right? So talk to me about, what are you seeing in your practice that people are doing that might either surprise you or that need a reframe, if you will?
Two different categories. First, a lot of people still are under the notion that fat can be bad.
Yeah.
Fat is going to cause me to get fat or gain weight, and it really is the types of fat. So it's educating them on the difference between, those good fats and maybe those more processed, seed oil type fats that are not as beneficial, for us as well. And then I have those individuals too who are more educated and do know that they need, these good fats, and need to also understand the incorporation of how fats get released and broken down, sometimes with periods of fasting. Yeah, and that is another educational piece that can benefit, the brain health with the release of what we call ketones, or the breakdowns, of some of the fats in our body.
Yeah, and I think that's in the functional medicine space and in sort of the inner circles, I think fasting is a secret weapon in a good point of view. But I can tell you, when I first heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could do this, because I'm going to be hungry and I'm going to be tired. If in fact it was the opposite, right? So I think that what you're doing in terms of the fasting is it's absolutely counterintuitive. But I think it's something that you have to try to be able to fully understand it, so I love that you're really out there educating people about all of this stuff, because we need it so badly. We need it because the health of individuals is just, and I see it through the pediatric, all the way down, from, your mature individual, all the way down to the young ones. I mean, I live by a school and I see these kids going to school and I'm like, oh my goodness, they're carrying double the body size, truly. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. It's just really scary. What about in your area? How are people's health in your area? So you're in the Midwest.
Yeah, no, there's lots of education that's needed. The health of people is not, optimal on many, levels, and being the dairy state and a lot of cheese and things like that, it can be, kind of mixed messages again that are sent to many individuals. It's trying to educate, being older and going through, with a family history and having my grandmother and my mom and also my maternal aunt, succumb to Alzheimer's and dementia. I really want to educate a lot of these younger families too. I mean, I see all groups of people because, like you mentioned, kids going to school who are carrying far more weight than they should. And unfortunately, individuals who have to eat at school, many of those foods are not always the best.
Yes.
That are offered, to them at all.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Tell us your lifestyle, as we could model as an example of what are some of the healthy things that you have incorporated in your vast learnings of many, many decades of not only practicing with clients, but also, really working on yourself and your family and your loved ones. Because I think that maybe a handful of them might pop out that would be simple, but a really effective tool for those that are listening.
Yes, thank you. One of the first tips that I give everyone is when it comes time to the intermittent fasting.
Yes.
No food 3 hours after supper.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Of the day. That's a hard one for many people because society-wise, and I grew up like this, you got a bowl of popcorn while you were watching, TV or whatever. And those are not good things after supper. And a couple of reasons. One, I educate them on if you can do that 3-hour window, you're allowing your meal to digest. And now when you go to sleep, blood flow can go to the brain so you can detoxify. It filters and it gets all the crud out, to so to speak, and we sleep deeper and we wake more refreshed. So I always fast 3 hours, before dinner time. Another tip is I always start my day with 8 to 10 ounces of water.
Yeah.
So when I get up in the morning, before I do my workout, and I do have a morning routine, I always drink 8 to 10 ounces of filtered water. And I tell people why. Because number one, you've slept all night, so you're really dehydrated when you first get up.
Right.
And water is a signal in our body to wake up all of our cells. So our kidneys wake up, the liver is more functional, our brain wakes up, we're better hydrated, and then you can make your cup of coffee or your tea and then have, your first meal of the day. If people can, I tell them work on waiting, an hour in the morning before having your first meal, just to incorporate in that fast a little bit more. Because of my family history, I take it a little further. My first meal of the day is typically around 11 o'clock or so in the morning. And a lot of times I will eat just 2 meals a day. And I can incorporate in a healthy snack during the day. It depends upon what I'm doing and what's going on. But that becomes very beneficial. Drinking half your body weight in ounces of water every day.
Yeah.
When we're hydrated, a lot of times we won't make poor food choices. I tell people that many times you're eating because you're dehydrated, not because you're hungry.
That's so true. That's so true. I've heard that many people talk about that, but it's also really challenging in the beginning. I found that that was incredibly like, whoa, this is a lot of water. I don't know, you know. And now I just read, and I love that you're doing this for your clients and for everyone that's listening. And I just read from Dr. Drew Pruitt, who's the business partner with Dr. Hyman. And he's actually saying double that amount in the morning and then go to your coffee or, you know, a caffeinated tea or something like that. So I was like, whoa, I don't know about doubling, but I might give it a try. So the value is such, is what I'm trying to say to the audience, and what Cherri's telling you about having this water. And I love that, what you're talking about, waking up all the cells. I love that. So if you can think of that image while you're drinking water, I think that that would help you tremendously in terms of achieving that goal over time. Yeah.
And to add to that too, it naturally raises cortisol levels. So cortisol, when it's up higher, gives us more energy, you know, and we feel more vibrant, more focused. We can do what we do throughout the day. And we want that cortisol low when we sleep at night, and melatonin, you know, to be higher, which is our sleep hormone. So when we're hydrated, it's adding in that benefit as well too. So it already helps our circadian rhythms, and our hormones do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, so this is like a huge value package of just drinking, you know, your water in the morning, all the value that it, you know, brings on all your cells, helps with your cortisol, kind of flushes out, right, the system a bit, I think.
Yes.
And also kind of, I love what you're saying about the cells, but also I think just lubricating and starting the mind, you know, sort of starting the engine going, if you will, of the human body, you know. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Yeah, that's really, really cool. So tell me, as we have to close, I could talk to you all day, Cherri. I think you must come back and tell us more tips of the trade in your bag there, which I'm sure will be more when we talk to you next. But if you were to look at your life and all the amazing things that you've done, you've been a critical care, you've been a cardiac nurse, you know, on the front lines, if you will, into more progressing into your functional medicine practice and helping so many people across a wide variety of platforms. Tell us what you think up to date, up to today, what has been your most magnificent experience to date? And of course, there will be many more down the road, but up to date for you, what is that in your heart?
Wow, that's a great question, because there's been, you know, so many, you know, things. I really have been blessed, because I think each step in my career has really been a stepping stone, you know, to get me, you know, to the next level. But I would say, you know, and it may kind of sound it's not really a sad, you know, story, but I think what happened to my mom, you know, because that was closer, I was close to my grandmother, but I was kind of removed at that point in time. But I just think my mom's mental decline and her cognitive issue is really a story of a blessing, you know, because it moved the trajectory for me to really delve into all of this and learn much more, and learn, you know, I mean, everything I do, you know, that I tell the people that I see, I've done for myself, you know. So learning those lifestyle steps, understanding intermittent fasting, understanding hydration, you know, understanding good fats, and really it's not detrimental, you know, to your health, those examples. So my mom's, you know, story has led me to share with others. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful that you can start with yourself, right? And fortunately, you had the intelligence and the wherewithal to capture that moment as really inspiration. for you, your family, your patients, your clients, so that's really beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing. And I so appreciate you coming and telling us all these good tips, and that I'm going to put a link in where to find you. So where would we find you to work with you, and how would we talk with you to schedule appointments?
Sure. The best way is probably to go through my website, which is www.csholisticfamily.com. And I have the ability for people to schedule a free personal call.
Wonderful.
And some people choose to, my phone number is also listed on there, and they can certainly call, to schedule that as well too. Because when I work with someone, I always like to speak with them first and get, that background to see if I have the services that they need, and that we're a good fit to work with each other.
Wonderful. So everyone listening out there, please take Cherri up on her beautiful offer and engage in conversation to discover new ways where you can better your health. So thank you, Cherri, so much for coming. We so appreciate you, and much success in 2023 with all your clients. And we will talk to you soon, to be sure.
Thank you so much, Nancy. So appreciate the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you.